All right, so yesterday I went to the Kroger's down the street from my house, and there stood a person that was more broken than you could possibly ever imagine. She just turned 25 a couple of weeks ago. Her mother passed away in May. The following month, she got hit by a car, and she faced eviction last month, all before she was 25. To say that this girl has suffered so much and worked so hard is an understatement. Because yesterday I walked up to her and I said, "What is going on with you in your life right now?" And she's like, "I think life is trying to wipe me out and send me up to heaven to be with my mom." And as she said that, I looked at her forehead and it looked like a giant hole right between her eyes, about 2 inches up. And I didn't understand because that hole wasn't there the last time I saw her. And then, of course, she pulled out her phone and showed me what had happened. She'd hit the gate on the back of a car that was automatic with her forehead because she doesn't own a car, so she probably wasn't expecting it. Anyhow, this is the same type of person that doesn't understand why they're turning 25 and they're sleeping in someone's living room because they can't afford an apartment or find any place to live. She's rent poor. She's technically homeless right now. If one of her coworkers hadn't let her sleep on the couch, she would be on the street. And I've seen many, many girls that work in that store either move into their cars or start sleeping behind the dumpsters behind the building. It's not uncommon. And the sad part is that all these people work and they're waiting to grow up, and there's no resources for them to grow up. I consider myself, if I were to give myself a timeline of where I'm at with my current work income and where I'm at with what I own, I just graduated from high school. So I'm like 2 decades behind schedule. I will never own a home. I will never buy a new car. I will struggle for the rest of my life. Now, imagine feeling that way and you just graduated from college. You're 21. You know that there's no jobs out there for you. You know that work stability and working at Domino's is probably going to be all that you have left in your life. In fact, yesterday I was leaving my apartment and right in front of me pulled up Grandpa. And I'm talking a man easily in his late 70s or 80s. And he had two Domino's pizzas in his arms and he was delivering them to the apartment around the corner from me. And I thought to myself, oh my God, is that really what old people expect to be doing? Delivering pizzas until they put them in the ground? And I couldn't believe it. And before I got on the computer this morning, I was reading an article about a man who retired in 1998, I believe. And his pension has never kept up with inflation. It hasn't gone up since then. So he's having to work until they put him away down there with the worms. But with that said, let's get into today's video. You ever notice how we do everything adults are supposed to do, work full time, pay bills, and still feel like a broke teenager who just got kicked out of the house? We're out here filing taxes with 3 roommates, Googling how many times can you reuse a tea bag and calling that adulthood. Turns out growing up isn't about independence. It's about getting punished for trying to survive in a system that makes freedom cost $1,800 a month in rent. Welcome to adult childhood, where you're old enough to suffer but still too poor to matter. That's the whole thing behind my act your wage bit, because acting your wage when you're making $16 an hour, that means that you're not paying attention at work, you're disconnected, you don't care what happens to you. It's not like the job is making you rich. In fact, working doesn't work for most people. In fact, I've mentioned this story before, but back in 2008, during that financial crisis, I was riding my bike back and forth to the university. And every day I saw this guy sitting in a shop looking sad. And I asked him, why aren't you retired? And he said, because I can't find anyone to run the store, and the store is what he uses to supplement his Social Security benefits. And then he said that doing the math with what he can afford to pay, people make more money by sitting at home on unemployment benefits than working a full time job. Now, there's your problem right there. If unemployment, which here in Arizona it's $200 a week, if if collecting unemployment is better than working full time, what does that say about that job or any job? That they're not designed to create adults. They're not creating situations where a 20 something year old can start building wealth through real estate. What being in your 20s right now feels like is being in a adult prison that's for children. You get all the benefits of being an adult children, but at the same time being treated like a child, never being allowed to grow up. And I think that's one of the main reasons. And I know this is highly speculative, but I think that's why anime has stayed so popular among adults, is that they're not getting to grow up. They're not getting into relationships to get married. In fact, yesterday I was at the gas station and I was pumping my gas and I was going to buy a box of smokes. And I'm up there at the teller, and there's a guy standing behind me. He's obviously not going to buy gas. He walks up to the gas attendant and he says, "I need some condoms." And then the guy says to him, "We don't sell that here." He gets mad. He jumps back in his car. And I was like, what the? It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, broski. What are you doing looking for condoms unless he had a lady tied up in the back of that blacked out SUV? The guy looked like mid 30s, overweight, just looked like your average white guy. But that happened yesterday. Who knows what was going on there? Anyhow, let's get back on track with talking point number one. They'll trust you with a register, a forklift, someone's child, or a corporate login, but not with a living wage, a mortgage, or time off. Welcome to adulthood, where you're responsible for everything but own nothing. It's like being grounded by life, except the punishment is poverty and the lesson is shut up and keep clocking in. Isn't that the truth? Growing up in today's wages is a constant punishment. And I've said this throughout my entire career. That's why we call it Pound Town. It is a punishment for going to work, is what the wages are. Because they're not going to help you thrive. We can't have people thriving in a society. In the wealthiest country in the world, no one is expected to thrive. You're expected to work your crummy job, get paid your $16 an hour, then from there, lose your housing, from there, lose your car, and from there, end up on the street. It's a very, very easy progression, especially if you don't have family or friends that will take you in during tough times. And that's something that a lot of Americans don't have. And it's something very unique to America, is that we have so much rugged individualism in this country. You know, when I was a kid, it was always understood when you turn 18, you're out of the house. Well, millennial parents realize that that is just forcing their children into bad situations. Every millennial parent that I know right now has their Gen Z kids living at home. And most acknowledge that they will live with them until they bite it. Because their kids aren't going out to form relationships. It's hard to bring home a lady when your mom's listening through the wall. It's like it's just not going to happen. But in a world in which people aren't allowed to grow up, what does that do to your mind? What does that do to your psyche, knowing full well that you're clocking in at the Quickie Mart every day, doing your side hustles on the weekend, and you will never move out of your childhood home? Your dad, he's been out of the picture a long time. In fact, I was reading something yesterday where a woman was complaining about how, because she has kids, she needs to keep all of her government benefits. And someone in the comments asked, "Where's the dad?" That's always the question, right? In these types of situations, where's the dad? And usually, like my dad, he's a Speedy Gonzalez, taps it, and you never see him again. which is the route most men take. I call it the hummingbird approach to breeding. Talking point number two: I don't need a TED talk on budgeting. I need rent that doesn't eat up 80% of my entire paycheck. I think I'm struggling because I bought a latte. Really? I'm out here splitting diapers and using grocery store apps like I'm planning a heist. The problem isn't my choices. It's that I live in an adult playpen with bills and no exits. The adult playpen. That really just describes the 8 o'clock. At 8 a.m., you check into the adult playpen, you play all day, and at the end of the day, they hand you your Happy Meal toy and something that looks like money. Again, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to keep saying it. We don't need jobs. We need money. And if you can't get money, then what are you working for? Are you working to stay trapped in the adult playpen? Because that's where Fleece lives. And Fleece, he likes it all. He doesn't discriminate. He doesn't care. He only knows one thing. It's the hard way at Pound Town. And the neon sign's going to turn on in approximately 30 minutes. So whether you're going to the Death Star, Surf City, or Evil Corp, we're all going to the same place. It's like a conveyor belt taking us there. And we can't move our feet, right? Because we can't get out of the way. Why would they let you shuffle your way and miss your important meeting with Fleece? Nope. You're moving along the conveyor belt. Fleece gets the guy in front of you, the guy behind you, and suddenly you think, oh, I didn't get a Fleece today. And he's like, no. You feel a cold draft run between the cheeks, and you know it's time. And you know that Fleece likes it when you brush your teeth. So, with that said, let's get into our closing monologue. They say adulthood starts when you stop needing permission. But tell that to the boss who docks your pay for being 5 minutes late, or the landlord who raises your rent just because he can. We're not immature. We're trapped in a life that feels like detention with no graduation date. But if enough of us start asking why the diploma came with debt and the job came with poverty, maybe we stop playing by their rules. So this whole conversation that I was having with AI last night, I was asking it about how my channel directly relates to books like 1984 or the movie Fight Club. And the AI went about and said that you're nothing like Fight Club. You don't want to tear anything apart. MillennialSteam's not about tearing down anything. It's about fixing a system that's hell-bent on making certain that your tighty-whities are between your ankles at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning forever. I'm not here trying to advocate for revolution. I'm asking for people to look up and look around and see what's happening. And ask yourself, do I have opportunity or do I have a hamster wheel to nowhere? And if the answer is you don't see yourself moving forward into adulthood ever, because the ladder to adulthood has disappeared, or they've removed so many rungs from the ladder that you're having to jump to the next one only to find out that it's missing, and then you fall all the way back down to that $16 an hour job. And there's no way that you're going to get out of it.